Welcome, dearly adored chosen ones. When they couldn't figure you out, they examined you under a microscope, seeking to identify what they dreaded. Allow it to sink in, because here's the stunning truth. You are not only being watched, you're being researched like a unique phenomena. Not because you were loud, not because you're showy, but because you defied the odds and escaped systems designed to destroy you. They are now unable to look away. You didn't breach any rules. You created a new game. You did not just survive what was designed to kill you, you transmuted it into power. And somewhere in the background, they're racing for their notebooks like, wait, how did they do that? With no help, no cheat code, and a lot of spiritual suffering. Let's get genuine. At this time, you resemble spiritual Wi-Fi. You're traveling invisibly between dimensions, but there's still buffering. Here's something most folks don't know. Elite institutions, technology corporations, and even the government are paying billions of dollars to investigate outlier behavior. Why? Because those that do not fit are the ones who disrupt the system. And guess what? You are not merely an outlier. You are the unexpected glitch in the matrix. In this video, we draw the curtain all the way back. We're getting into the true reason you're being examined, why your presence feels like a heavenly interruption, and how your entire being has become a quiet resistance against a lie-filled society. Ready? Buckle up. They never wanted you to understand what you're about to hear. Number 1, you did not just survive. You outsmarted the mechanism designed to delete you. You didn't just survive. You outsmarted the mechanism designed to delete you. That is why people are watching. That is why they are now looking at you in bewilderment, because you weren't meant to go this far. The setup was intended to allow you to break down silently, doubt yourself incessantly, and finally collapse into the exact manner you were created to destroy. They told you stories about who you were and who you would never become. They gave you crumbs and expected thanks. You were put in circumstances where speaking out meant being isolated, where power was equated with anger, and where your intellect was either rejected or stolen. They were not just hoping you'd fail. They designed the playing field so you wouldn't understand how strong you really are. But somehow, you read between the lines. You learned to talk silently. You began to decipher the manipulation concealed inside friendliness, the gaslighting disguised as care, and the envy masquerading as counsel. Others sought reassurance. You requested clarification. You did not settle for survival. You deconstructed every pattern designed to trap you. You noticed the holes in the culture, the weaknesses in the indoctrination, and the artificial grins that concealed genuine jealousy. Instead of growing bitter, you got sharper, smarter, quieter, and much more destructive to everything that relies on control. That's what they don't comprehend. How you fled without a guidebook. How you maintained your spirit pure despite swimming through toxins. How you came out, not only breathing, but blazing. And now they have no idea what to do with you. You're not broken and you're not naive. You are not seeking vengeance, but you're obviously not providing access. They investigate you because you become something the system did not anticipate. A healed soul awakens and is completely conscious, with memory, purpose, and vision. You walked through every psychological trap and yet recalled who you were. That worries others, particularly those who only know how to lead via deception. You aren't simply surviving anymore. You're flourishing in a world where you were never supposed to thrive. That is not luck. That is mastery. That's heavenly wisdom wrapped in human flesh. And no matter how intently they monitor, there is one thing they cannot imitate. Your soul did not fold. Number 2, your perseverance is not only emotional, it's an intellectual struggle. Resilience is more than simply having a strong heart or the ability to recover from suffering.
It goes much deeper than that. People are particularly concerned about your strategic strength. You did not just weep, heal, and move on. You analyzed the pattern, calculated the setup, and took mental notes while everyone assumed you were broken. While they underestimated you, you improved your thinking. They assumed you would remain down since you were silent. What they didn't know was that you were silently downloading everything. You were studying talks, energy manipulation, strategies, covert disrespect, phony support, and coded envy. You weren't only coping emotionally with the upheaval, you were creating an internal library of how the game was played. That's the part that confuses folks. You weren't only emotionally strong, you were cognitively advanced. You also noted that they only showed up when there was an audience.
You captured the ones who celebrated your anguish but then vanished upon your rehabilitation. You identified patterns of sabotage disguised as compassion. And the whole time, you pretended not to notice. But your mind was recording everything. Not for vengeance, but to comprehend. Because when your spirit is chosen and your intellect is trained, you accomplish more than just survive. You climb with receipts. You no longer move away from your emotions, you walk away from knowledge. And now that you're out of survival mode, folks see you've never been sluggish. You were strategic. You were not confused. You were gathering data. You were not passive. You were waiting to see how far they would go. And now you're 10 steps ahead of the individuals who attempted to study you. This is why you cannot be played as previously. You comprehend both spiritual and psychological warfare. You understand the code behind people's actions. You discovered how to safeguard your energy without declaring it. Most individuals will never have access to such intelligence, not because they are unable, but because they never stopped long enough to see through the illusion you created. They now study you not because you are just powerful, but because you have elevated strength to the level of art. You transformed survival into strategy. And that type of brightness does not just shine, it exposes. Number 3, you are living evidence that spiritual purity can overcome social power. You are living evidence that spiritual purity can overcome social power. That's what confuses people in a culture that values appearance, clout, and prestige. You refuse to play by their rules. You did not pretend to be buddies in order to advance in life. You did not sacrifice your values to earn favor. You didn't dumb down your personality to fit in with spiritually bankrupt people. And despite the connections, accolades, and acclaim, you ascended. That's what causes people to stop and gaze. They don't uncomprehend how someone like you succeeded without selling out. They expected you to surrender, comply, crumble under pressure, and play their game. They reasoned that if they excluded you long enough, ridiculed you hard enough, and isolated you enough, they would succeed. You'd ultimately cave in and begin pursuing their definition of success. But you didn't. Even when you were lonely, you kept true to yourself, even if it means sacrificing opportunities, relationships, and comfort. You did not take shortcuts. You chose a course that required you to develop actual character. Now you enter into rooms with an undeniable presence. People can tell that you didn't gain your power from a platform. You acquired it through hardship, obedience, and spiritual development. That's uncomfortable for folks who have formed their lives around facades. You reveal what is lacking in them without even trying. That is why they are watching you. That is why people are talking about you. That is why they secretly envy you, because you have what they cannot buy: alignment. The same people who previously neglected you are now interested by you. They had social impact but lacked depth. They now turn to you for direction, even if they won't acknowledge it. You did not become who you are via appearance. You achieved it via inner mastery, making you invincible in a performance-driven world.
You did not climb your way to power. You invited it by remaining truthful. And now you're living evidence that true authority comes from the soul, not the limelight. That is the kind of power that never fades. That is the kind of power they cannot duplicate. That is why they are studying you.
But you tore the contract in half. You've ceased performing. You began prioritizing peace over popularity and purpose above permission. And now you go about with a level of freedom that most people cannot comprehend. It perplexes them because, in their world, confirmation is cash, approval is power, and status is vital. And here you are, making fresh movements and soaring higher without asking anybody to sign off. That does not match their model. So now they are looking into you. They notice how you walk around an area without attempting to control it. They see how you are regarded without attempting to impress. They attempt to figure out how someone with your history can stroll with unwavering self-esteem. What they actually want to know is how you got rid of your need for them, because they are still captive, trapped in the cycle of acting for praise, bending to fit in, and pursuing clout. They do not even believe in you. On the other hand, you choose to like yourself more than they could. That was the reset. Everything began to orbit differently at that point, and now your stubbornness to seek acceptance is what makes you appealing. Because genuine confidence, rather than superficial attention, is uncommon. When you become a leader who does not need to be liked, you do more than merely stand out. You alter the atmosphere. They did not anticipate you to develop beyond their control, but you did. And now they're left attempting to figure out what they couldn't stop. Number 5. You did not comply to be safe. You constructed safety with your own soul. You did not do what most people do to survive. You didn't fit in, give up, or betray yourself to feel comfortable while others compromise their truth. To maintain good status within systems, cliques, and families, you selected an altogether other route. You did not comply to be protected. You discovered how to defend oneself without pretending to be someone else. That choice altered everything. It wasn't that you were supported. You did not. You were often ostracized, misunderstood, misrepresented, and even targeted. However, you stopped waiting for someone to come and rescue you. You stopped expecting a safe zone to be given to you. Instead, you built one, not outside, but within your own spirit. You created a peaceful, unshakable environment in which truth could thrive even when no one else believed in it. That's what sets you distinct. You were not protected by a strong family name, a support network, or privilege. You were exposed, but you did not break. You learned to be your own anchor, covering, and compass. That is not survival. That is spiritual mastery. People cannot describe that type of power, so people categorize it as independent, intense, or tough. However, people are afraid of what they cannot control, and they cannot control someone who does not want their approval, shelter, or acceptance. When your safety is internal, you become a threat to institutions that depend on fear and groupthink to function. You do not need a throng to feel safe. You do not have to belong to feel worthwhile. You don't need agreement to know you're correct. That is disconcerting for those whose identities are based on acceptance. You constructed your safety via spirit, not society. That is why people are attracted to you while yet feeling afraid. You teach children what it is to be self-sufficient in a society that encourages dependency. The frightening aspect for them is that you aren't bitter or chilly. You are just entire. And nothing frightens a frail system more than someone who does not need it to live. Number 6, you don't just think differently. You feel at a frequency that disrupts their programming. You don't just think outside the box, you live on an entirely other frequency. Your thinking is not just unique, it's connected, and your heart is tuned to something genuine, old, and holy. While most people are programmed to react to fear, ego, performance, and approval, you've shifted your whole existence to truth.
That alone disturbs everything around you. You did not just alter your mentality, you cleansed your spirit. You cleansed your nervous system by doing the inner work that most people shun. You felt every betrayal. You sat with each trigger. You confronted your own shadow. As a result, your energy is less chaotic. It conveys clarity. You are not vibrating with worry, resentment, or false identity. You are departing from tranquility, purpose, and spiritual integrity. That energy does not just enter a room, it causes the whole room to quake. People struggle to put into words how they feel when you come in. You do not say much, but something changes. Some people feel drawn to you.
Others feel vulnerable. Some people admire you. Others get defensive. Why? Because your presence represents who they really are, not the version they portray, but the fact they conceal. Your energy does not equal the noise, it exposes it. They've been conditioned to react to turmoil, trickery, and false confidence. But you arrive grounded, peaceful, and thoroughly linked, and it's unsettling for people who are founded on image. You don't merely question their ideas, you disrupt their whole operating system. You bring a calm that appears confrontational, not because you are attacking, but because you're not cooperating. And when you've spent your whole life avoiding self-awareness, standing in front of someone who has mastered it is intimidating. You are not confrontational, yet your sincerity is audacious. You aren't loud, yet your presence is imposing. You do not strive to be superior. You are simply free. That is the part they cannot fake. That's what makes you memorable. Your frequency reveals the falseness in their programming, and no matter how hard they try to ignore it, something about you causes them to rethink what they believed was true. And it is power, silent, spiritual, and unstoppable. But what about number 7? Your peace does not stem from avoiding turmoil, it stems from mastering it. Your work is not the kind that comes from hiding, isolating, and avoiding confrontation. Most individuals cling to a delicate surface level of tranquility until life shocks them. Your peace comes from trekking through the fire, fighting every storm, and refusing to give up. That is what makes it genuine. You did not wait for the commotion to end. You discovered how to sit in the center of it without losing your sanity. And that amount of inner strength draws attention. Inquire and study. Do you enjoy that? Trying to figure out how you didn't shatter. You did not hold back your feelings in order to look powerful. You processed them. You addressed your triggers front on. You cried. You cracked. However, you never detached from yourself. Others evaded their suffering. You walked into the core and made peace with it. And as a result of it, you become someone who does not back down when life gets difficult. You do not fear discomfort. You've made peace with them. And that's unusual. You are not at ease because life has become easier. You've got it because you stopped jogging. You remained when others fled. You remained calm in the face of others' terror. You learned to breathe through the turmoil and make clear judgments rather than desperate ones. That level of emotional sovereignty cannot be taught by a course, a book, or a motivational speech. It can only be won by experience, grief, truth, and soul, and complete surrender. People now look at you and feel something that they cannot express. You are not hyper. You are not passive. You're centered. And in a world full of reaction, that equilibrium makes you seem superhuman. People underestimate how much self-mastery it needed to get here. They just know you move differently. You talk without fear. You depart when your soul decides it's time. You do not react, but rather respond. And you do it all without attempting to prove anything. They are studying you because they have never seen someone so collected, but so genuine, so quiet, yet so forceful. You did not just withstand the turmoil, you've mastered it.
And that mastery gave birth to a tranquility that endures even when life knocks hard. That's not the type of power you flaunt. You embody it. They sense it, even if they do not grasp it. Number 8, you did it without selling out. And this poses a challenge to their plan. You did not give up your soul to achieve, and that alone makes people uneasy. In a world where most individuals advance by taking shortcuts, kissing up, or becoming someone they are not, you remained faithful. You did not beg to be seen. You did not sugarcoat your reality in order to gain popularity. You did not tread on others in your quest for success. You still made it. That is what threatens them. That's what violates their unsaid rules. They based their strategy on compromise. When someone insults you, smile. Maintain silence in order to maintain your seat. Change who you are, just enough to make others comfortable. That is how many individuals earn favor, advancement, and access. But you went in a different route. You rejected the game. You did not need the table. You constructed your own. And now your success demonstrates that genuinity can be just as potent, if not more, than manipulation. Your story undermines the excuses individuals make to justify their treachery. They wanted to believe that selling out was the only option, that being false was essential, and that conforming to the mob meant survival.
But you are a contradiction to all of that. You did not bend, yet you still broke through. That makes people nervous because they now have to consider the possibility that they did not have to betray themselves after all. They just lacked the confidence to be different. You make it apparent that the truth is not a weakness, that self-respect is not a barrier to achievement, and that you may move with integrity while still progressing. As a result, people either adore or detest you. There is seldom a middle ground among individuals who covertly compromise on everything. You're a living reminder of what they may have become. That is not simply threatening, it is haunting. You did not take shortcuts. You chose the long, quiet, and sometimes lonely route, but it paid off. People who climbed climbs while wearing masks are now scared by your mere presence. You did not comply, and you did not promote your principles. You still stand higher than ever. That is not luck. This is what happens when you choose purpose above popularity. That's what happens when you gamble on your soul rather than the system. And now they're looking into you since you breached their regulations and yet still won 9th place. You fled from the lab while they were still toying with fire. Now they're trapped inside their own experiment. And you are the evidence. It backfired. Number 10. You did not give up on yourself just to fit in. And this makes you illegible. You did not exchange your identity for inclusion, and it alone distinguishes you in a society that values conformity. While most individuals shapeshift to be accepted, watering down, changing their personality, and concealing their depth, you grabbed onto your truth with both hands, even when it threatened your relationships and kept you out of group chats, invites, promotions, and acclaim. You did not fold. You kept it genuine, and your reluctance to surrender yourself is what makes you incomprehensible to others who only understand acting. They don't know how to deal with someone who cannot be controlled by permission. Most individuals are easily manipulated because they want approval. Flatter them and they'll comply. Reject them and they'll shrink. Threaten them with exclusion and they will stifle their own voice. But you don't reply to any of this. You have accepted being misunderstood. You have perfected the ability to stand alone without feeling lonely. You choose alignment over applause, and that's unusual. They cannot foresee your next move because your choices are not motivated by insecurity. You don't seek attention, you don't need affirmation to feel valued, you're not trying to gain favors. You are listening to your spirit. And when you act from essence rather than fear, your path becomes invisible to people who are still caught in survival mode.
That's why you're described as secretive, passionate, and hard to understand. You are not announcing your intentions. You aren't spilling your anguish. You are progressing from a point that most people haven't reached within themselves.
It is not arrogance, it's about genuineness. And when someone's identity is built on acceptance, seeing you be unabashedly whole is both exciting and infuriating. You did not give up your spirit for ease. You did not rewrite yourself to be loved. And now you walk with unmistakable inner clarity. You don't manipulate and aren't manipulated. That is the kind of presence that people experience but cannot describe. That is the kind of energy that does more than merely move rooms. It rewrites the rules. That is precisely why they are studying you, because you remained complete in a world that required you to break numbers. Your aura now resembles a guidebook for those who betrayed you. They never anticipated you to emerge with such elegance, clarity, and calm strength. When they deceived you, they believed they had the ultimate say, but development won out. You did not need to go back and prove anything. You just have to become it. And you did. Not out of spite, but because to sovereignty. Not to validate, but to align. That is what bothers them most. You didn't improve despite them. You recovered because you were never going to remain broken. They are no longer looking at you with pride, but rather with curiosity. And in the silence of their own remorse, they finally realize the truth. They didn't just lose access to you, they lost access to a version of themselves that they may have developed had they not violated the lesson you were here to teach, number. You didn't recover just to be acceptable. You healed to become unshakable. You did not go through all that anguish, sadness, betrayal, and disappointment to emerge soft, smiling, and subservient. You didn't recover just to be loved. You recovered so you could be free. You worked hard to become complete, not only to please those who only supported you while you were broken, small, and simple to manipulate. That's why you stand out, because instead of shrinking to keep the peace, you grew into your entire self and did not apologize for it. Most individuals healed just enough to be accepted, to function, and to make others around them comfortable. But you didn't stop with surviving. You continued digging. You confronted the aspects of oneself others hide. You exposed the bitterness, humiliation, fear, and trauma rather than burying it deeper. You altered it. And that kind of mending does not increase your likability. It renders you unshakable. They expected you to soften in order to regain their trust. They expected you to shrink to be accepted again. But you returned stronger, clearer, and with more boundaries than ever before. That's what puzzled them. You did not seek closure. You didn't need validation. You did not wait for an apology. You healed without permission. And now, the same individuals who previously believed they had the ability to shatter you are watching you create a life that they cannot have. Not because you are harsh, but because you have advanced beyond their capabilities. They don't comprehend how you're growing without their forgiveness, or how you're flourishing without being welcomed back, how you're pushing on without their approval. That's because your recovery didn't include reconnecting with them. It was about reconnecting with oneself. You weren't attempting to make everyone else comfortable. You were learning to be comfortable in your own skin, truth, and soul. And now, you won't bend to keep folks. You don't smile to be safe.
You do not dilute your tale so that it is palatable. You do not do healing, you embody it. People are worried of that type of fullness because it is unpolished. It is real. And in a society that values phony tranquility, your genuine sincerity is both unusual and remarkable. A number. You decipher the code designed to keep you spiritually pure. You were not simply born into a family. You were born following a pattern. The pattern of quiet, repression, survival, and self-neglect. Generations before you swallowed their reality in order to maintain calm while smiling, conceal anguish, and pass along emotional debts disguised as tradition. Nobody spoke about it, but everyone felt it. The dysfunction was normalized, the fear was inherited, and the trauma was reproduced. But then you came up and broke the code. You questioned what others had accepted. You saw what others disregarded. You experienced what they numbed. And even if they advised you to quit being too deep or too sensitive, your soul knew you weren't insane. You were being called. What was I called to do? No one else in your lineage has the fortitude, clarity, or knowledge to end the spiritual poverty that had been a way of life. You refused to pass along what almost destroyed you. You ended the cycle of emotional sabotage. You stopped concealing the truth in order to make others feel comfortable. You stopped demonstrating allegiance to persons who were committed to dysfunction. And the instant you did, everything changed. You felt alone. You were not properly comprehended. But you kept going. You continued tugging the thread that no one else would dare to touch. In doing so, you dismantled a web that had kept generations hostage. Now you walk with the clarity they were never meant to have. You may hear truth in stillness. You can detect manipulation in a grin. You identify something others claim does not exist. This makes you a threat, not because you are aggressive, but because you are free. And freedom always disturbs those who are confined by fear. Your waking did not happen at random. It was a heavenly interruption. You were sent to bring light to a shadowy ancestry. Because of this, you are being monitored. They are unable to look away. Others are observing, others are passing judgment, and some are quietly hoping that your bravery may inspire them. But deep down, they know you opened something old and once cracked. It cannot be closed. You did not merely heal, you rewrote history. And this type of power does more than simply change your life. It sends shockwaves throughout generations. That is why people are watching. This is why they are worried. And that is why your name will be remembered long after this hush has faded. A number. Your life became a case study of divine timing. They believed you had lost your opportunity. They laughed at how long it took. They muttered about your delays, pauses, and silent seasons. You were the one they mentioned. Never quite had it together. Too slow to become spiritual. Too reluctant. While everyone else was racing, hustling, and displaying receipts, you were still in what seemed to be limbo, mending, building, and listening. But what they didn't get, and what they still failed to comprehend, was that your timing was not wrong. It was divine. You were not behind. You were aligned. You were not slow. You were being prepped. You did not come late. You came just when heaven planned your breakthrough. And now, others who once pitied you are discreetly following your footsteps, seeking to grasp the formula that led you here without force, compromise, or noise. Your life has become a case study of divine timing, and it is evident today. The tranquility you bring, the alignment you walk into, the doors open without your pleading, abundance that flows without being sold off. Everything occurred on a time frame that they are unable to reproduce since it was not motivated by desire. It sprung from obedience. That's the part that bothers them, because they hurried, they cut corners, they pursued outcomes. Many of them arrived just to discover that it was not genuine. It did not last. It failed to meet expectations. And now they're exhausted, perplexed, and discreetly watching you since you did things differently. You did not pound yourself into dust. You did not rush into trauma. You waited, trusted, and flowed. Your presence now reveals the fallacy that everything must be done quickly. You are evidence that waiting is not a sign of weakness. It is wisdom that divine intent does not manifest on demand.
That the most forceful movements occur after periods of stillness. They are watching you now because you have broken their addiction to hurry, because your experience challenged their idea that late equals lost. You became proof that God's timing is not only real, but valuable. It costs you to be patient. You were not late. You were fashioned by eternity for a moment that would not come until you were fully prepared. And now that it is here, they are unable to look away, because they are seeing for the first time what divine timing looks like in you. You did not just survive in a world determined to break you. You altered the rules for what surviving entails.
Every difficulty you experienced, every time you were misjudged, simply honed the strength that today makes you invincible. You go beyond the need for approval, beyond the drive to fit in, beyond accepting false tranquility. Instead, you created your shelter from inside, conquered your storms, and aligned with a timing far beyond any human timeline. You now stand as a live contrast to every system that attempted to control you. Your experience is a blueprint for spiritual power and inner sovereignty, a quiet lesson for those who previously questioned you, and a beacon for those who continue to seek the truth. They study you not because they comprehend you, but because they see a force that they cannot contain or recreate. You succeeded not by complying or compromising, but by rising to your full, real strength. And that is why you are being observed, since you demonstrate that genuine freedom does not come from conformity. It stems from breaking free. Remember this. Your narrative is not just your own. It's a disruption, a proclamation, and a revolution all in one. So on your path, keep walking in your truth, and trust that your mere existence is already influencing the world around you. You made it, and now they can't stop watching. If this message triggered something in your soul, don't let it go. Subscribe to the channel and enable alerts, since this is just the beginning of our deeper adventure together. Every video is designed to bring life, strength, and clarity into your soul. And believe me, you do not want to miss what comes next. If this video connected with you, it tells the algorithm that this message is important and helps bring it in front of people who need it the most. Leave a comment below. Share what struck you the most. Your voice might be the confirmation that someone else has been hoping for. Most importantly, share this with someone who is breaking patterns, mending openly, and rising on their own terms. You never know how powerfully it will resonate to them. This isn't just content, it is a movement. And if you're here, you are already a part of it. So remain connected, grounded, and keep ascending. God bless you.